Hey folks, welcome back to Game Geeks. I'm your host, Kurt Wiegel. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about a pair of products from Paizo. Yeah, try saying that after you've had a few drinks. All right. They are the Starfinder Alien Archive, or the Monster Manual, or the Starfinder Pact Worlds, or the Setting Book. I have an odd love affair with Starfinder. And here's why it's odd. It is crunchy as gravel. There's a lot of moving pieces that you've got to keep track of. There's a lot of add-ons and modifiers and situations and grid-based combat and range that normally makes my eyes hemorrhage and my gut churn. However, there is something that warms my heart considerably to Starfinder. Regular viewers of the show know that when I am approached with a new sci-fi book, one of the questions I always ask myself is this: can this do Farscape? Farscape being my favorite sci-fi show of all time. Now, some do it better than others. Bulldogs would do a good job if you really like Fate. Savage Worlds would work. Starfinder is the closest to being thematically and setting-wise Farscape that I have found. It is weird. You've got strange mysticism and technology. You've got weapons. You've got magic. It is a beautiful mess of all of those things. That's why I'm very fond of it, even though it is well outside of something that I would normally enjoy or collect. So to start with the Alien Archive, let's face it, folks, this is your monster manual. This is your bestiary. Now, it's thinner than most of their bestiaries that they give you. What you have in here are an array of bad things for your players to fight, or an array of not so bad things for your players to ally with. I think there are certain tips of the hat to other sci-fi settings in here. For example, and once again, to reference my favorite thing on Earth, Farscape, you've got this flying space whale that is intelligent, that has a surprisingly habitable stomach, that you can try to travel around with. It's called an Oma. Well, the Leviathan in Farscape was called Moya. It might be coincidence. It might be. It might not be. Either way, that really made me happy. And it's an interesting plot device because it's just a big monster that flies through space that you can either be friends with, or, oh my God, I'm in its breeding grounds, run, run, run. Or you might end up in the belly of it or stopping people from poaching it and trying to kill it. All right, you've got certain races that I see as becoming a long-term threat to the game. For instance, you have the Fomorians. These are ant people. I mean, if you couldn't tell from the name, these are Fomorians, but they have a civilization, and they could be a civilization that is a threat. The undead get a lot of love in Starfinder. There's an entire planet inhabited by them, and they're by and large not that horrible to deal with. So there's quite a few undead in here. Then you've got the Reptoids. Now, this is the Reptoids of David Icke and current conspiracy theory. They're Reptoids. They can take your place and take you over. Folks, if you get a good long look at these Reptoids, they look a heck of a lot like Scarens from Farscape. I know I'm referencing something some of you haven't seen. I apologize. They look a lot like Scarens to me. They don't necessarily have all the same abilities, but the picture is there. You also have Dragonkin, which is another race that is out there that has its own ability that I can very easily see any one of these being an invading force into your Pact World setting. More on that in just a minute. You also have an assortment of other things you'd expect. You have elementals with their stats updated for Starfinder as opposed to just straight Pathfinder. You've got space goblins. It's not Pathfinder without goblins. You have a variety of just flat out monsters that you've got to deal with. Now, my personal favorite thing you have in here is the Assembly Ooze, which, if you look really close enough, is a gelatinous cube with a real reason. You ever wonder why there are gelatinous cubes in dungeons other than just to screw with your players? Unless a wizard put them in there to clean up after everything else that gets in there. The Assembly Ooze is essentially, it is a cube of nanites that will disassemble anything that it gets a hold of and then reassemble it into something else for which it is programmed. So it doesn't just scoot along and give you this invisible wall of clear jello with a skeleton in it. It actually rips you apart and turns your component molecules and atoms into something else. Personally, I find that really, really scary, especially when you realize these things can be weaponized and then turned against you just as easily. If you don't believe that can happen, Stargate fans, I point to the replicators. One of the other things that's cool about the Alien Archive, ladies and gentlemen, is the fact that a lot of these presented in here are all options for player character races. Now, obviously, you don't get to play the giant space whale as your player character race. This is not over the edge. But it gives you more breadth of things to deal with than what was necessarily contained within the Starfinder core book. In the Pact Worlds, this is the setting for the Starfinder game. This is essentially the solar system that Golarion was in. Now, Golarion is no longer there. In fact, there's about 300 years ago, people only start remembering things then because there's just nothing before that. That's about the time they discovered FTL, the drift, and the rest is histrionics. So each one of these planets gets quite a bit of love. I thought it was very interesting that there's actually a set of spheres that float right above or even in the sun of this world that are completely and utterly habitable. And as you can imagine, there's a temple to the sun god up there. Then there are a bunch of planets that cover a whole mess of biomes with critters, each with its own individual problems. For example, you have Eox, which is the world of the undead. You've got Absalom Station, which is where Golarion would have been. And it is one of these great big huge stations that sort of like it's your city of Greyhawk. It is your Waterdeep. It's basically where a lot of things go on. I can't dig into a heck of a lot of detail through all of this for time purposes. I know a lot of times I get criticisms of you didn't talk about it enough or therefore you didn't read it. Ladies and gentlemen, you don't want to listen to me go on for 45 minutes. I love my voice. It's deep, it's karma-like, it's melodic, it's beautiful. Who wouldn't love this voice? But eventually you get sick of me. So would I recommend these? If you like Starfinder, and I know a lot of people who don't for one reason or another, but if you like Starfinder, if you're looking for sci-fi with a whole lot of crunch to it and a very interesting setting in which to operate, then I can't recommend these highly enough. It's a lot of fun. And for Game Geeks, I'm your host, Kurt Wiegel. Good day and good gaming.